Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. I'm very excited to have on today's call Ben Settle, who's one of my favorite copywriters online, one of my favorite newsletters that I read daily. And you can check out his work at bensettle.com. And what Ben helps many people do around the world is increase their sales with email. And he does it through, essentially, I don't know if there's maybe any kind of more advanced way to say this, but basically just emailing every day, writing every day, which sounds so simple. And I think it is pretty darn simple. And we'll talk about that, but it can be so effective. So Ben, thank you so much for joining us on In the Trenches.
Oh, thanks for having me back, man. I mean, we've talked before, and it's always good talking to you, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into kind of that tactic of mailing every day and why that's so effective and what your experience has been with it, maybe back up a little bit. How'd you even get into writing in the first place and copywriting and email marketing?
Okay, well, I'll try to make this as short as possible. When I was getting ready to graduate college, I didn't want to have a job and all that, so I was watching this infomercial by this fine, upstanding businessman named Kevin Trudeau, who's now serving time in prison. You see where that's heading toward. But at the time, he was the infomercial king, and there's an infomercial on called Financial Freedom, which he was basically building his MLM downline using infomercials. Joined into that, got in a lot of debt, absolutely sucked at MLM. For a couple of years, I just was floundering around, gotten like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 in debt. I mean, it was a lot. Ended up living in this one-room office because I couldn't really afford a place to live. I was trying to recruit local business people using cassette tapes, because it's back when cassette tapes were being used, trying to hand them out to people and all that, and just getting laughed at and abused and everything. Eventually, I just was laying there at 3 a.m. in the morning thinking, God, you obviously don't want me doing MLM. I mean, I'm terrible at this. And, I just kind of got up and looked at my bookshelf, and there was this book called The 7 Lost Secrets of Success by a guy named Joe Vitale. And the book is about this old school advertising guy named Bruce Barton. Bruce Barton, nobody really knows who he is today, but in the early to mid 1900s, he was like a household name. He was advising presidents. He was a well-known businessman. He's the second B in the giant BBDO ad agency, which is still around now. He was an open enemy of FDR. He's just everywhere. Everybody knew who he was. Well, in 1919, right after World War I, this out-of-work sales manager came to him looking for help. And this is what I read in the book. I just kind of turned to this page. I guess he had his specialty was writing sales letters. So Bruce Barton's like, look, you need a job. Why don't you look out this window at all these buildings out there, all these businesses? Why don't you write a letter selling them on hiring you? And that story just stuck with me. I was like, whoa, I didn't know you could make a living writing just letters, because I don't really like I'm not an extroverted guy or anything. I'm very introverted, and I just don't want to walk around asking people if they keep their options open for making money and all that. I wouldn't be able to write a letter and just be done. So that got me into, I kind of looked into copywriting and sales letters, and it was like a rabbit hole after that. And then probably about 5 or 6 years later, I transitioned into email specifically and started specializing in that. And now that's mainly what I'm known for. I still love copywriting, but I'm mostly known for emails. And I've built a very simple business based on sending 1 or 2 emails a day. That's worked pretty well, and other people have used it too. And it's just so simple. Nobody thinks it's possible, but that's the real short version of everything.
What an adventure, going down the MLM rabbit hole and getting back out alive.
Oh yeah. I mean, MLM. It's the gateway drug to entrepreneurship though. So, it's not totally bad, but.
No, that's interesting. Okay. So then you get into this, you start doing, how long have you been running kind of bensettle.com and doing this daily email now for?
I've had the website since 2002, but I didn't start doing daily emails until 2000, the very end of 2008. So probably, 8 or 9 years now? And so I just do it every day, without fail, without any excuses, anything. I always have an email or maybe several emails going out depending on what, I sent a second one today. I didn't have to, I just did it because it was fun. To me, it's like eating dessert. I enjoy it. I don't think it's hard. It's kind of therapeutic when you get into it. And people who do this sort of thing will tell you the same thing. It's not necessarily a chore when you know how to do this. It's fun. When you see sales rolling in, it's even more fun.
Okay, so yeah, so talk me through that. Like when you started to set this up, what are some of the foundational things you have to think about or consider kind of before you even you start going the daily email route? Are there some basics or fundamentals that we have to have established?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very important to understand the power of consistency. Consistency trumps proficiency. I mean, it's far more important to be consistent than to be like this great writer. You'll get better as you do it. And most people aren't going to start out writing these like great emails. I mean, you just got to start out however you are, learn a few principles of how these things work and just start doing it every day. And you'll start having a dialogue with your list. And it becomes very clear what you should be saying, what you shouldn't be saying. But consistency is the most important thing. You just make that commitment. There's not a lot of people, like in our world, Tom, I don't think there's a whole lot of people who have character. And by character, I mean they're not bad people or anything, but character is following through on a decision long after the excitement of the moment has passed when you made that decision. So you got to make that decision. I'm going to write an email every day. And when you understand the benefits of it, this becomes an easy decision. But then you got to stick with it. A lot of people don't stick with it. I know this one person. I'm not going to name her because I think she's a great person and everything. And she's admitted that she's kind of screwed this up a couple times. I remember she started following my system, became part of my newsletter and all that. And then she left thinking that it was more important to focus on something else. Then she came back and she started writing daily, and she started logging in a Facebook group I have that saying, wow, I'm on day 90. I can't even tell you how much my life has changed writing an email every day for 90 days. Like everything, like clients were coming to her. She's making more money. She was just having a more fun time doing it. Her life was becoming more structured. She was finding success come to her. People were starting to want to like do business, like joint ventures with her, all because she was consistently out there every day. And this was just 90 days. And then she ended up falling off the wagon again and recently came back and she's like, I went through all of my emails after the last couple, because she had like a rough couple months and she had some personal tragedies and stuff. And she's like, I was making money from these emails and, why did I ever stop? So, I guess some people have to learn the lesson the hard way, but that consistency is everything. Just be consistent, put your mind into this and understand that, like everybody's being taught on the internet that everything has to be easy and fast and all that. I don't think anything's easy, but I do think writing an email a day is very simple. So simplicity and consistency are really the keys.
Okay, I love this. So there's a couple questions I want to ask. The first is, so you have bensettle.com. You have obviously the newsletter. It's why people sign up for the free one. Then you also have a paid one, email players, and I love that. But how do I know, what content should be like exclusive for like the email newsletter, the free one, for example? Then what should I publish on my newsletter or I'm sorry, on my blog? Do you have any suggestions on that? And we won't even get into like, paid versus free content just yet.
Yeah. I don't give away stuff for free that other people are paying for. So I don't hard teach in my emails or on my blog or any of that stuff or in videos. I teach principles, not tactics when it comes to and strategies and stuff. I don't really teach tactics free. That's the stuff people pay for. But I will teach people strategies and concepts and principles all day long in emails and blogs and all that, if that makes sense. For example, I could write an email about the power of consistency. Have I really like taught anybody anything hard from the newsletter? No, but I've given them a nice foundation and something to think about. I think principles are more important than tactics in a lot of different ways. In fact, from what I understand, and fighter pilots in Vietnam and all that are told a principle overrides a tactic. It's more important. Mm-hmm. So I like to give people principles and then I like to sell them the tactics.
I really like that. I'm writing that down. Okay, that's great. Now, so that explains actually between like kind of the free newsletter and then obviously getting email players is going in. If I'm purchasing that, I'm getting more of the tactics, more of the kind of 10-foot perspective type content, correct?
Yeah. And let's take it to another niche. So, it's more relatable to the average person, because not everybody sells internet marketing. I mean, I guess a lot of people do, but for someone who's wise enough to actually be in a consumer niche, which I'm going to be getting back into actually very soon, the golf niche. But let's take weight loss, for example, because everybody's pretty familiar with that. I spent a lot of time in the weight loss niche and that sort of thing. I'm not going to sit there and say, eat this exact food at this exact time and all that. That would be something in the paid product. In an email people get, I might talk about, for example, like something I read in the news, like, some doctors are not accepting patients who are over a certain weight anymore. which was an actual news story. I remember writing an email about. It's not like I'm teaching them anything, but it's still informational and valuable to them. And it sets them up to want to actually lose weight, because it's a scary thought that I'm too heavy and no doctor's even going to want to see me.
Mhm.
So that's like one example. Like the news, things that are going on in their lives. My dad, for example, this last couple of years, he's had like this really bad mole problem in his yard, like just mounds and piles of molehills just like showing up in his yard. You could not bore him on the subject of moles. If you got emails talking about moles, I mean, without even saying what exact stuff to use, he would be endlessly fascinated by it because it's in his world.
Mm.
So the key is to get in people's world. What are they thinking? What's important to them? Just talk about it. So have a conversation with them, and then you'll be more ready to at the end give them a link where they can buy something. But not until you've established there's a problem or some kind of vision of the problem or whatever it is they want. So going back to weight loss, if I paint a picture about how someone who's too heavy is not going to be able to get into the best doctors, that could scare them. That could scare people. And it's a very real thing. And I built this vision of it first. And now they're ready to look at whatever I have to sell. So I'm very big on building visions and being in other people's world. And this is not stuff I made up by any means. These are principles taught by the late Jim Camp, who was the world's most feared negotiator. I'm a big fan of his. I think there's so much, if you just did those things, build a vision of the problem before you pitch and get in their world at all times, you can't lose.
I love that. Get in their world and building the vision. That's fantastic. On your blog, though, like I see you publishing, maybe once a week, but obviously you're doing daily or sometimes one daily. What content goes on your blog versus what do you keep in your newsletter? Like, how do you decide that, if at all, if it's even a thought process, or you just kind of randomly do it?
The only thing I put on my blog is my daily emails. And I don't even do that every day because sometimes I recycle emails from before then, so I don't bother putting them back on the blog. But that's it. I have no real strategy with my blog. Okay, my way of thinking, and this is something that people they argue with me about this till the cows come home. I've had very high level A-list copywriters and marketers literally like completely argue with me on this, and they're wrong. Okay, so rest assured, what I'm about to say is very true. The only purpose of a website, if you're doing direct response marketing, which I assume we all doing listening to this, the only purpose of your website, ultimately at the end of the day, is to build a list. Now, people will say, well, no, I need to brand myself, and I want to build credibility for myself, and I want to demonstrate what I know. And you have to ask, why are you demonstrating what you know? Why do you want to brand yourself? Why is that important? I mean, at the end of the day, why are you doing that? And it's to get a sale. Again, the principle is to build a list. The tactics are, well, I need to brand myself or demonstrate my knowledge or whatever it is that people think the purpose of a website is. At the end of the day, it's to build a list. Now, in my case, I'm trying to build an opt-in list. That's why I have it rigged. My web guy, Jim Yagi, who computer scientist, brilliant guy. I work with him on a lot of stuff. And actually, he's my AdWords guy. But I have another guy who's a web guy. His name's Keith Commons. They're both brilliant. But I had Jim Yagi because he's very familiar with this kind of stuff, what I'm trying to do. On my blog, every day, if I put an email up, it's pitching email players 99% of the time. Mm-hmm. Well, if you go to my blog and you click any of the links in any of the blog posts that go to emailplayers.com, it doesn't take you to emailplayers.com. It takes you to a page of my blog that urges you to opt in to get a free issue of emailplayers.com. Because when you opt in, I give you the first issue free as a PDF, not a print, obviously. And I'm doing that because the principle I'm going by is I want to build a list first. Because once I get someone on my list, I can now sell them over time. I don't want someone going to my emailplayers.com when they haven't been on my list first. I want them to get to know me. I want them to know there's a lot of people who should not be buying that product, so they'll figure that out by being on my list. That's the purpose of a website and my way of thinking. And this is why I don't have outbound links and like a blog roll and all that stuff. No, the point is to get them in there. If they never come back to my site after they opt in, I'm okay with that. I don't need them coming back. Like, I don't care about website views and all that. I don't. I want them to opt in and never even go back there. I want them to just read my emails after that. So that's the principle I go by when it comes to my blog. It's not a matter of putting content up there. It's just a matter of demonstrating my knowledge so that they join my list.
Yeah, I like that. Where do you see, like, and I'm sure this ranges across industries, but where have you seen like anything recently where you've seen like this is a great example of like, industries outside of copywriting, direct response marketing, stuff like that, where people are using this tactic or are using this strategy, the idea of like kind of publishing daily, sending emails to their newsletter daily, where it's working really well, or even people even if you have examples where you go check it out and be like, oh, okay, interesting. Because I think some people have a hard time like thinking like, how could I possibly write so much content? But maybe if they can see an example of other people doing it in certain niches or industries, it might be helpful.
I can't think of any because I live in this world of marketing and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people. There are people who do it because there's people who are customers of mine who do it. And I'm well, so for example, there's a guy named Roger Heska,
Yeah.
and he's in the fitness world. And I think he's got a lot of URLs, but like one of them is superbeing.com. He calls himself like the 46-year-old teenager because he does look young. I mean, do whatever he's doing, it works. And he writes daily emails, and he'd be an example of someone who does this. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I assume he's still doing it. And so that would be one example. I'm just trying to think. I mean, most people I deal with are actually doing business to business stuff. So, but I mean, it's the same concept.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what you're selling. It's all the same.
So so most people are doing business to business. Do you find that this is then kind of equally effective in a B2B type setting? Like, is there anything you'd have to like consider if it's B2B versus B2C?
Well, you always want to modulate everything to your market as far as how you speak to them and all that. But the structure of sending a daily email applies to I can't imagine it not applying to anything. It's just, but what you say is going to be dependent. Like, for example, when I sold in the weight loss niche, it was under a pen name that was a female. So obviously I'm not talking to them like I do bensettle.com list. I'm not letting the Kraken out, right. I'm talking to them very differently, and so you got to modulate it to your market. But the structure of everything is the same. I mean, it's the exact same.
Okay, great. Again, and I think you kind of answered this but I've written it down. I see some compelling thoughts on like long form content for blogs. And I guess it comes back to like the why are you doing it, which is, to build that list. But I was just curious if you had any thoughts about that, like in terms of like, even though, we might be seeing in the market, I think a lot of people or long form content, like 4,000 words plus or something like that, being a great like lead generator for a blog. Is there ever a time where you think that might be an appropriate, not necessarily like by itself like strategy or tactic, but can that supplement the daily emails?
You could. I don't do that, but a lot of people doing that think they're getting SEO and all that, and it's just, to me, and maybe they are. I'm not saying people shouldn't or should. I think that if you bog people down with too much content, you're going to lose the opt-in. I mean, now there may be markets where this doesn't apply. I admit it. Like there might be some, like for example, if you have a political list that's like libertarian minded, they tend to like long, meaty dissertations. On, I still wouldn't do it though. I would still go for the opt-in. I would just write just like my daily emails. I don't understand this like minimum word count thing. Just write what you want to write. If it happens to be 200 words, great. If it's 2,000, fine. I don't place limits and that sort of thing on any of my writing because this is the problem with article directories right now. There was so much spam going on and they had to do something. I understand it, but it penalized good copywriters because they started implementing minimum word counts. And so now I can say in 150 words what someone who's not very good at writing, it takes them 500 words to say.
Right.
So, I'm against this whole like pigeonholing ourselves into you have to do this or have to do that. Even what I just said about the purpose of a website build a list, I say go ahead and test it out. If you want to have outbound links and social media share buttons and all that, be my guest. But I know the way I'm going after it is like old school direct response. I want to build a list. And what do I have to do to build the list fastest and easiest and in a way that people like? And to me, it's just I take my daily emails and I put them on my blog.
It's so simple, but it's also tough. At the end of the day, like I think it's tough because it's a commitment and it's the consistency you talked about. Like I think that's, there's something to be said for that. It's just, it can be a challenge for people. When it comes to something like that, I know you kind of said it by saying, by committing to it and just writing every day, you start to build a dialogue and then you get to know what people want to hear from you. But how about for that person, like just starting out, kind of getting ready to dive into that? Is there anything that, you recommend in terms of like having like a certain amount of content built out before they might, test the waters with this? Or really, is it just like dive in, figure it out as you go?
Well, I think you just have to do it because trying to plan, I mean, just start writing an email a day, even if you have no list.
Yeah.
You'll have a list. I mean, you have to build a list. So if you have 2 people on your list, write them an email every day. The more emails if you have 0 people on your list, write an email every day because you're just going to get better at this. Or you could write it and put it in an autoresponder, and so it's going on a schedule. And when you do get a list, it'll all be ready. But I don't think people should put this off at all.
So I think you did a really good job of like telling stories. Obviously, I know that's probably a skill you've both acquired and like mastered over time and probably are continually mastering. But do you have any like, I guess, thoughts or ideas on like what's an appropriate way to like structure email? I feel like there's definitely like, underneath the words, there's probably like something along the lines of like, started with a personal story, transition to something else. And again, that might not be the way you like to get granular on these kind of things, but I'm just curious if there is something that like a formula or some kind of structure people can say and be like, okay, yeah, this is it. Like, even though I know the most important thing is emailing, but is there something that you approach or have developed even in your own writing style where there's kind of like this, like this is the process is going to go through? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Here's the thing with storytelling. I seem to have an opinion on everything, don't I?
I like it. That's why you're here.
I was like Donald Trump. Nobody's better at stories than me. Nobody's better at this than me. But the thing is storytelling has been made so complicated by people. It astounds me. Well, you have there's 7 plots. And I mean, it's all horseshit. Look, what you do is you pretend you're at the bar and you're telling a story to someone. However you would say it, just write it down. It's that simple. Like everybody tells stories all the time and they just don't even realize they're doing it. If I said, Tom, tell me the story about how you got this podcast started, you would just start talking and telling me. All you gotta do is write it down. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Write like you talk.
Yeah. That's it's funny. Seth Godin says that a lot. I used to read him for a long time. Still do. He's also one of those daily email people I've been getting for a long time. He's always said that, right? Like you talk. I guess that comes down to kind of being personal and making it feel like a dialogue. And versus like kind of coming at this like academically or something like that.
Yeah, that's the worst thing anyone can do. And I don't care how stuffy the market is. You've got to be a personality, and everybody has a personality. What I recommend people do, and see, this is the problem with swiping emails. This is why I'm so against people swipe emails partly for what I'm about to say. You can't swipe a personality. It's a personality. Take your personality, whatever traits that, whether good or bad, and I'll give an example of a bad trait that I have that I accentuated 1 or 2 or 3 points. So, for example, I can be kind of crotchety and kind of grumpy, and not really liking people and all that. So I just play it up in my emails. I ratchet that up a couple notches, and I have fun with it. And so whatever your personality is, and this is different for everybody, just go ahead and make a cartoon, almost like caricature of it, and just have fun with it. And, now if you're writing to a serious market, for example, and there's always like exceptions, right? So let's say you're writing to people who have cancer, like that's your market, which I think would be a good market to sell in. Actually, I've not done it, but I think it would depress me to be in a market like that. But some people have that mind where they could do it. Obviously, you're not going to come out telling jokes and all this stuff, but you can still tell stories. You can still be you. You can still be you. Like there's people, for example, who are super compassionate people. So they should accentuate that a little bit more than they really are in real life. And that little bit of exaggeration will get you noticed. It has a natural inherent entertainment value. So, whatever it is your personality is, just go ahead. If you happen to have a dry sense of humor, then have a dry sense of humor in your emails. It's like, just be you, so that when people read what you want is like the people who are closest to you, your family, friends, would they recognize that was you as the writer? And if the answer is yes, that means you're doing it right. If it's no, because you're writing all academically and cold and stale, then you have to change that. Your mom should recognize your voice in your writing. I guess that's the too long didn't read version of it.
I love it. A few more minutes here, a couple more questions. You're directing people to email players most of the time. I mean, I know I've noticed, obviously, when you have a new book out, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. You push people to that in different ways. So like, for example, like I run kind of essentially what is equivalent to maybe a creative advisory firm or like an agency when it comes to like, we do, product launches, marketing and stuff like that. So I'm very aware that I probably should be focusing on that niche and teaching in that space. And that would be a great lead generator in that context. Does that make sense to like go as niche as kind of your market is? And that's what I'd write on? Or does it make sense for me to try to be a little more broad and just like write about like, I don't know, marketing or something like that, which actually I'm saying it out loud and I'm already thinking that's probably the answer is no, but I'm just curious your opinion.
You can write about anything you want as long as you can tie it to whatever it is your agency's doing. So, for example, you mentioned you guys help people with product launches.
Yeah.
You can write an email about a product launch that went really bad and like made somebody go bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
You built a vision up of now what someone who doesn't do a product launch right can have. But we can help you with that. Our clients are, don't have that problem. And, whatever your call to action is, give us a call or send us an email. We'll talk about it. So you can go broad if you want. I mean, sometimes I don't even talk about business at all. I'll talk about a movie I saw and then somehow twist it into like why they should go to email players. I don't really have like people always ask, how do you do that? I think you just have to write a lot, and it becomes like something you just do. Like, I don't know if I can like show someone how to do that, because it's just a function of playing around and doing it every day. And the first several emails, they're going to be a little clunky, probably. That's okay. At least you're out there doing it. And that's more than what most people are doing.
Yeah, totally. Okay, fantastic. So now I want to transition to kind of what you're working on now with the book and everything else. Tell us a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about it offline, but what is it? Where can people get it?
Well, I mean, back in like August of 2013, I started writing a novel called Zombie Cop. And I always knew it would be 7-book series. And I've written and published the first 3. They've all been on Amazon. The last one I published was like over a year ago. But this last summer, I decided I'm going to bang out books 4, 5, 6, and 7, all the first drafts. And I did. July, August, September, and November, I banged all 4 of them out. So starting in 2017, I'm going to start editing and publishing all those. Hopefully by the end of the year, they'll all be published. So that's consuming a lot of my time right now. I have this vision of ultimately getting these made into movies. But, I have to have a lot of control over it, because I don't want Hollywood screwing it up. So, I'm kind of formulating my own business plan for this and all that. But right now, I just want to get the books finished. So that's one thing. I also have part ownership in a business in the golf niche. And we launched it about a year and a half ago. We had a bunch of problems. Now we're going to relaunch that pretty soon, probably in a couple of weeks, hopefully. So I got that going on. I've been real active. I started this Facebook group earlier this year, like last summer, and somehow it's starting to become an obsession with people. Like, it's literally it's a time suck for everyone, me included. It's just one of these things, but I'm seeing a lot of potential in that. So I'm playing around with ways to deal with that. So it's stuff like that. Like, it's a lot of it's not like it used to be. I have the email stuff down. I have my 1 email a day. Now my main business takes me 10, 15 minutes a day, and I'm done. So now I'm going to do all this fun stuff and different stuff.
That's awesome. You're a pretty prolific writer, clearly. I think you'd wrote a book in like a few days or something like that recently, wasn't it?
These novels would take me, they're all 14 chapters long, so I would do 1 chapter a day. But these last 2, I did much faster, like within 9 or 10 days each. And so that was nice. Yeah, I just like ran with it. It was just fun. I just had fun with it. I love writing these things. I'm just kind of sad when I finished the last sentence of the 7th book. I'm like, shit. I mean, I got like chills. I was like, I can't believe I just finished this. Like, this is kind of cool. Of course, they're not done yet. I still have to edit them and all that. But it was nice to have the whole story kind of fleshed out.
Right.
So to speak, they're monster books,
Right. So I see the one benefit of writing every day is that you develop that. Now, obviously, you get very, very, very good at writing quite a lot.
Very fast too.
Yeah. And then now, how about when it comes to editing? Do you have anybody edit your blogs, newsletters, or your books? And maybe the books, but do you have anybody edit your content?
Well, I go through 10 drafts total, and then I hand it to my publisher, and he'll go through and edit it. But really, him and I we're both sucky at catching spelling and grammar. Because his problem is I write, my editor's like one of my best friends, and I really write these books for me and him. We have the same like taste in this stuff. I'm like doing it because I think it's cool. I don't know if a general audience will or not. And he gets into them, and I think he misses stuff because he gets sucked into the book. So I know these last 4, I'm going to have, after he gets done doing the editing, I'm going to have like a professional editor go through it to make sure they catch everything, because we always have like tons of spelling errors and stuff. And the thing is he's already a good editor. He's actually the most prolific writer of computer books in the planet, as far as I know. I think he gets sucked into them. I think he just gets sucked into the story and, so misses stuff. But, that's a good sign usually, though. If he was bored, that would not.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Fantastic. Wrapping this up, where can people reach out to you? Where's best to find you? Where can they get your newsletter and anything else you want to point them to?
Just go to bensettle.com. And if you give me your precious snowflake-like email address, I'll send you the first issue of my email player's newsletter. It's a PDF. It's a print newsletter, but I'll send you the PDF for the first issue. There's 24 different ways of making more sales with emails in there. It's a no-brainer to take that thing and just say, oh, here's an idea, and start writing. And I've had people tell me they've made like thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars just using that free issue. So that's, if you don't want to opt in, if you're like, nervous Nelly about giving me your email address, thinking I'm going to spam you or whatever, then you can bypass it at bensettle.com. Just go straight to the blog. And there's like almost 2,000 pages of blog posts and well over a dozen hours of audio and video training. It's all free. So bensettle.com.
Fantastic. So my last question is, if people want to get the back order catalog, can they?
Only when they've become paid email player subscribers. They can buy the back issues, but nobody can buy them unless they're already paying subscribers. There's a very specific reason for that. This is not an info, like an ebook info product you buy once. It's like, I only want people who are going to commit to the long term, who treat this as an investment and not a purchase.
Yep.
Because it should be an investment. It's like going to the gym. People think they can just go to the gym one day and, oh, that's it, I don't need any more help. That's not the kind of mindset I want. I want people to have a long term. I'm going to stay with this because I know it's going to consistently make me money ongoing. So that's why I don't just like, I could sell all this stuff if I wanted to, but I follow a principle based thing and not tactics. And so the principle is I want people to be successful. How's the best way to make them successful? It's by not letting them, skip steps and not letting them not be disciplined and not letting them just kind of think they're going to just skid by, because this takes work. It's not fantasy land. It takes work.
I love that. Man, what a great way to end it. I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate the focus on principle and letting that guide everything else. Ben, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
You too, man.
Some great food for thought. I know this is a meaty one I'm going to come back and listen to, and I hope everybody else does too. Definitely check out bensettle.com. Highly recommend the newsletter. Check it out. And other than that, Ben, take care, man. It was great having you on the show.
You too, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkes.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.